Welcome back to Up in the Blue Seats, your favorite Rangers podcast from the New York Post. As always, I'm Mollie Walker, joined by Hall of Famer Larry Brooks and former Ranger Brian Boyle. Since we last convened, we've got a Rangers 1-0 shootout win over the Blue Jackets, a 5-4 overtime loss to the Montreal Canadiens, and then a dominant 5-0 win over the Senators. Larry, you wrote it yourself. They're back, baby. You said you didn't think you'd be writing those words. So, how
No,
impressive is this start to a turnaround in your eyes?
it's 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 shocking. It's as shocking as their first half was to me. They they hit rock bottom and they just bounced right back up, and you never knew when rock bottom was going to come because it got lower and lower and lower by the week. There were the games against New Jersey. Um, there were the games in Alberta. There was just one after another, and it was a free fall. And somehow they braked it. I don't know exactly how. Um, I don't know if they walked in one day and said, you know what, let's put all this. Let's start again. Let's commit to defense. Let's commit to our teammates. I think a lot of the first half was about off ice issues. Um, I think the Trouba lame duck captaincy had a major impact. I don't think publicly embarrassing Chris Kreider went over too well, and it shouldn't have. So I think they put that behind them, and then they solidified as a unit. I think Will Borgen has helped, but I think there's been a collective mindset and a collective approach that was missing the first 3 months of the season. I think they're back as a credible playoff contender, but I don't think they're by any means a complete team at this point. I don't have them in the Stanley Cup final at this point. So they have a lot of work to do still. It's kind of like I don't, the NBA. Um, you make up a 30-point deficit, but then you've depleted your energy, and then you lose in the fourth quarter. So they've gone on this run, but they have to keep it up because they're not in a comfortable spot by any means. But Igor Shesterkin has elevated his game his last couple. They're just playing as a unit, which was missing for the first 3 months of the season.
Well, I think at this moment in time, there's enough time to be able to coach them to do things right. So prior to this, when they lost to Chicago and they lost to Nashville, who were 32nd in the league, their respective games that they played them, it was you couldn't go into the media or the meeting room in the classroom and learn anything. It was basically bigger, broader strokes. Like what's going on here now? At least you can look at a Montreal game where they didn't get 2 points, and you can find ways to get 2 points. You can coach things now because they're playing real hockey again. You can go to the Garden as a fan and leave saying good, bad, or indifferent. They put out an effort. Before it was, we didn't even know where to start having these podcasts. So that's good. um, and I think there is enough time where you can coach them back up to sort of some details, more minor things. I think you've seen the emergence of a fourth line. That's huge. I think you've seen Mika Zibanejad get his legs back underneath him. That's huge. And then everything falls into place after that. Will Borgen, like you said, Larry, you talked about him for maybe the last two episodes. I wasn't as high on him. And maybe that was because of what was going on with the rest of the team. It's
Mhm.
unfair to him that I wasn't as high on him because it's not easy getting traded in the season. I know that. You're right. He's been a great presence in the back end. And, it's not just that. There's other noise, too. Kako said some things. He got moved out. Zach Jones has said things, and who knows what's going to happen there. But that happens anyway. The fact that they're playing spirited hockey where they can, they're in the game. There's a physical element to their game. They're checking more. They're getting saves when they need them, when they have a breakdown, and their power play is starting to do something. These are all the things that they're built on. And now at least they're doing those things. Like, who knows how far they were going to go if all things were great, everything was perfect this year. At least now you can have a conversation about, well, what if we do get in? Mm-hmm. Who wants to play us? Because if they do get in, that means they played some great hockey.
Right.
100%.
You know, I've talked, Molly, sorry.
No, you're good.
I've talked about this since September. The Rangers' record for the last 2 years when Matt Rempe is in the lineup is 21-4-4. 21-4-4. I'm sorry.
I don't know whoever wants to argue against it, you're an idiot. And you don't know it. It's not even, he is so effective. And he doesn't even have to do anything. So don't tell me he's not effective. Don't tell me this is it. Get this out of hockey. Shut up. You have no idea what you're talking about. It's still men playing hockey against each other, and there's an intimidation element to that. No question. No question. And Montreal played better after Jack Guy got in there. And that's a brave thing both those guys did. You have to give them credit for both of them. It's not fun to get punched in the face with a bare knuckle, especially against a guy that can rip your face off. So when he gets in the lineup, you know what it does to his teammates. It's not like an intangible thing. It's very, very real and tangible. So all the people whining and saying, this guy can't play, what are we doing? And this is how many minutes, and this is how many suspensions. Shut up. Go away. Like, just be quiet. Enjoy the wins.
So if we're skipping around there, then let's get into Matt Rempe then, shall we? So I think he had his second highest ice time of the season in the last game, 9 minutes and 12 seconds. That goal. Can we talk about the goal? The play between Adam Edstrom and Matt Rempe on that was, I mean, Edstrom with the pass to himself off the boards. Then he gets it to the center of the ice. Matt Rempe is streaking down Broadway, and the poise that he showed to get it to his backhand, it was silky. It was a beautiful goal that he might not have scored a couple, however many months ago last season. And I think that shows improvement. It shows improvement in his skills. It shows improvement in his journey toward becoming a more complete player. And I'm obviously 100% agreement with you guys. The spark that he gives, everybody skates a little taller. I don't think Igor Shesterkin goes to punch Brady Tkachuk unless Matt Rempe is on the ice. And in that entire – he might have. But in that entire sequence also – Rempe had like 3 people holding him back, and he still came out of the scrum with Brady Tkachuk's jersey in his hand. And that's something that Larry has talked about a lot. We've talked a lot about on the show. It's something that the Rangers don't have unless Matt Rempe is in the lineup. And it has been such an instrumental presence to have for them because otherwise they have none of it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Sorry, Larry.
What I'm interested in is whether Peter Laviolette will give him ice time.
Yes, so that's the next topic of conversation.
You don't know. I mean, we don't know because clearly he wasn't playing him in October. That's why he was sent back because the coach he wasn't dressing, he wasn't playing. So I hope, like I thought last year, provided enough evidence that he was a constructive player. Obviously not. So I hope that this sample size, uses. I hope this sample size presents more evidence that they're a better team when Matt Rempe dresses, when Matt Rempe plays. And I know it's kind of like, a candidate with like a single issue, but I have zoned in on this. It started last year because you could see. And the other thing, Molly, you mentioned Edstrom's pass. Remember last year when they came up, when Rempe came up, it was Rempe and Edstrom. Mm-hmm. It was Rempe and Edstrom who provided that size and that mentality that changed the team. That was when they were, look, they never went through anything like this year last year. They went through like a 6 week stretch where they played 500,
In
which was
January.
way below their standard. But they never went through a 4-15. They were
No.
they were never this bad. But still, they were kind of they were just moseying along. They were losing they had lost their mojo from the first couple of months of the season, and here came Rempe, and here came Edstrom, and they were flanked. They were flanking Barclay Goodrow, and that became a thing. And then Edstrom went back, never came back up, partially because he had an injury, but he never came back up. They never looked at the Edstrom Rempe um, combination again, and now they're getting some play, and they're both very effective in different ways.
I think Edstrom has been fantastic. He's going to get better and better. Carrick has been fantastic. Going back to the goal, Molly, it's hard to play short minutes. I think you can take maybe 1,000, 1,500 guys in the AHL, NHL, Europe, whatever, and any one of us can do that, screwing around 100 out of 100 times when it's not an NHL game. Mm-hmm. So people don't realize the skill level that all these guys have. It's not that difficult. Do it in a game, it's different, and especially when your hands are cold, your legs are tight because you haven't skated that much. That's what's impressive to me. He's learning how to play that role. That's what that means when you're learning how to play that role. It's not when to hit a guy or when not. It's how to be effective in 6-7 minutes. I mean, look at Columbus. Look at Columbus this year. They're one of my favorite stories. Look at Matthew Olivier. This guy's going to get $4 million, I think, and he should. Mm-hmm. If he doesn't, he's got a bad agent. This guy is incredible. He fought Ryan Reeves last night. It was incredible. The team loves him. He's got an A on his sweater now. It matters. It really matters. And to have that, I'm not just saying it's him. I mean, you got Werenski, you got all these other guys, but there's a reason they play a certain way. They should be the 30 to 32nd team in the league this year. And no one would blame them if they were the Columbus Blue Jackets. And they're not. And you're seeing more with the Rangers. They're more of a team. You battle, you get into things, you go through adversity, you have some scars. It's exciting. I don't know where it's going to end up, but it's much more exciting. And these two guys, and Rempe in particular, he pulls away a lot of the attention, whether it's positive or negative, from a lot of guys that have to go about and do their thing. You need a first line center, right? Because a lot of things happen in a game where you need your first line center. You could go 4 or 5 games where you don't need Matt Rempe, but if you always have him, it's always there. It's not an insurance policy. It's like if you live in the jungle, you got a little weapon in your bedroom. It's like, no one's coming to my house. No one's coming in here. Hopefully we don't have to use it, but if you do, it's there. I just think it's black and white to me.
My question to both of you, though, and Larry, you asked Laviolette about this the other day, but how sustainable is the way that Laviolette is managing the bench when Rempe is in the lineup? He had a couple of 5-minute games. When you think down the line in a playoff series against, say, the Panthers, perhaps, how sustainable is it for Laviolette to be cutting it down to only playing 11 forwards?
In the third, it's interesting. I think you can manage that. You get Panarin on a little bit more in the third period. That's what he likes to do. After a penalty kill, or he likes to get Panarin for a second shift. What I would look at more than the 11 forwards is Trocheck's ice time. I think Trocheck's ice time needs to be managed a little bit. The last couple of games, he was, I think, a little bit down, which is good. I mean, he was playing in the 23, 24, which I think is a little bit much for him because he's such an important player. And he's such an important player. And as we've now moved into this phase of the season, he or Carrick are now taking defensive zone draws for Heedle's line. And so, there's more responsibility that Trocheck is taking as the season evolves. And so that's one. He's not a big guy. Um, so that's one I would take a look at. I don't think too many guys have been overburdened. I think it also depends the flow of the game, how much special teams play there is in a game. But more than just cutting down to 11, I think the coach is going to need to trust Matt Rempe more. I just do. And whether that comes or not, I guess we'll see as it develops. Because Matt Rempe, he talked at the end of his suspension about he knows he's a marked man,
Hmm.
and he has avoided any questionable hits. There's been nothing. He hasn't given the officials even the chance, to make a bad call against him. So, as he becomes more disciplined, maybe that filters into Laviolette's thinking, and yes, we can play him in the third period if we're down by a goal. Yeah, yes, we can play him in the third period if we're up by a goal, protecting a lead. So I think that remains to be seen. But I think he's managed the bench fairly well without Rempe in the third period. I also
I
thought,
think it's
I've been so critical of him, of the coach and his decisions, but I did want to just mention, jumping to a different topic, that when Keandre Miller made that turnover, committed that turnover at the end of the Dallas game, and it wound up in the net. Dallas comes back to tie the game late in the third, and they win it in overtime. There were a lot of people who were suggesting that Keandre Miller should have been benched, shouldn't have gotten another shift, should have been benched. He was not benched. I mean, he was not benched. And since that play, he's played his best hockey. Now, we're always looking for narratives, we're always looking for reasons, and maybe they're not there. But I thought that Laviolette staying with him, and I think, staying with him that night, and I think the combination of Miller and Borgen has worked really well. So it would have been low hanging fruit for Peter Laviolette to bench Keandre Miller. Even though he said, well, there were a couple of other mistakes on that play too, which is true. Still, it was right there. And Laviolette said, no, I'm playing him. He's my guy, and he has played his best hockey of the season since then. So I just want I know how often I question Laviolette's decisions, so that's one that's one I endorse.
That hasn't been Laviolette's style
No.
since he's been here, so that's not really that surprising. But I know
what
that,
choice does he have?
yeah, yeah, I agree.
You need to play him. You need Keandre Miller to be at his best, and if he's not, you need to wait till he is, because you got to play him. And the other thing, last thing on Rempe is, like, what if you turned him into a guy who, when you're up a goal specifically, throw him over the bench whenever, any dot, any draw, because he has the tools to do that too. To be an absolute shutdown guy with his reach. Him and Edstrom, there's just nowhere to go in the D zone. So, and with Carrick just getting better, getting more comfortable, you have to. That's what you have. So let's try to work towards making that work, because you don't have a choice. Um, and if you want to go 11, you can go 11. You can get more. Like you said, Larry, you got the right shot centerman. You got two of them now. You can taper down on Troach, he's going to give you everything. But if it's 24 minutes, maybe it's 85%. You rather 100% Troach for 19 or 20.
Hmm.
Either way, but that's his job. That's what he's doing behind the bench. And for that game, and then the week ahead, 2 weeks ahead, it all matters. So you got to give him credit. That's a tough time to be patient. But again, you don't really have a choice, because you need those guys to be effective too if you want to climb up.
And to
You know
Larry's
what I
point,
just thought of, and I know it's again, it's kind of jumping off the page, but I wonder how Four Nations is going to impact the season. And that, I'm not talking about injuries, players who get injured during the tournament. I just wonder if there's going to be a gap. Certain players are going to be playing, like, Trocheck's going to be on. He's not getting a break. Other guys are getting breaks. And I know this has always been a concern when the league broke for the Olympics. There were injured, like Tavares got injured one year. Even Yager got injured his first year with the Rangers, and that changed the trajectory of that season for the Rangers because he wasn't quite the same after the Olympics that year. But it's an X factor, that no one can control, but it's something I think that's going to become more and more on our consciousness as we get into Four Nations.
Well, I think that's true for a lot of teams, Larry. But I look at the Rangers, and I look at Mika, I look at Troch, I look at Kreids, I look at Adam Fox, and I'll even take a peek at Igor, who gets a rest. And I say, these guys haven't had exactly the season they had last year. This could be a jumping off point for them. So I think it could benefit them being around these guys, getting away from, us, you guys. And you know what I mean? And then they can go play with these guys and maybe rediscover something, not rediscover something.
But they'll be seeing Mollie's in our face.
Yeah, I was gonna say I have terrible news. We're covering the entire tournament. Surprise!
They're not getting away from us. But I remember in 1998.
Yeah,
I remember in 1998 actually. The Olympics in Nagano, the first time the NHL went, and the Rangers were having. That was the first year that was when Messier had left the previous summer, so they were having a dreadful season. It was awful. And I thought that Richter and Leach specifically might be rejuvenated by going to the Olympics, getting away from the Ranger situation. But they kind of played to the level that they played at the whole season. In that Olympics. What?
You're ruining my great idea.
Just tearing it down.
Just cold water all over.
Yeah. No, I think you could be right. I mean, especially the fact that this is just the way that I look at it. I mean, it's their first international play in technicality in a really long time, and that's obviously really exciting. And I mean, it's also
no, I agree.
Yeah,
it'll be a jump off point.
Yeah,
it'll be a jump off.
Nice.
No, we're saving you, Brian. No, I definitely agree. But at the same time, I'm also wondering for someone like Chris Kreider, who's obviously had problems with his injuries this season, whether or not that's being something that's being discussed, whether or not he should go. And I guess a lot of it is probably dependent on where the Rangers are in this wild card race and how they feel about their chances once February rolls around.
Well, I think if he's healthy and he's playing every game, he's going.
Yeah, I would imagine too.
This is his last shot to play in a best on best. So I think as long as he's healthy, he will be there, and I think you can envision him being a special teams player for them. Getting whatever ice time he gets 5-on-5, but I feel like he is one of the best penalty killers in the league. He is one of the best power play guys in the league. So I think as long as he's healthy, he'll be there.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I wanted to kind of zero in on the Senators game too, because that one was obviously a big one at the time. Senators were in first place in the wild card in the East. Now I think the Rangers are 2 points out of a wild card spot going into tonight's game against the Flyers. I mean, that was a big game. It was a big game, and I felt like it was a really big performance, a borderline a statement performance from them. I mean, how do you weigh that Senators game, Larry?
Well, they dominated Ottawa. I thought Ottawa had no answer. They eliminated Tkachuk really as a factor. They weren't, they gave up, like, according to Natural Stat Trick, 8 scoring chances against, their lowest of the year, the first time they had held the team to single digits scoring chances against. They didn't, they were in control of the game, which there has, you haven't had many 60 minutes this season where there have been total control of the game, and I think they demoralized Ottawa. I don't think there was much, there was the scrum in the goal crease, but there wasn't an awful lot of pushback from the Senators either, because every line that came on did its job on on Tuesday night. So it was a very impressive performance, and it was their second straight impressive performance at home against the team they are chasing and are in the wild card mix with. They weren't dominant against Columbus on Saturday night, but they were buttoned down. And again, I thought Shesterkin had one of his best games of the year. He was in total control, but they played so well defensively again. And I think that's what's been so impressive, that they're getting contributions from four lines, and their five-man commitment to defend has been on display. Well, they had a bit of a hiccup in Montreal on Sunday night, but it was such a fast game. And Molly, you can talk about it because I know how much you love them, being in Montreal, the atmosphere. But that was just a wild, fast game. It was a big time, regular season game. It was a very, very fun game. So, and they wound up getting a point out of that because Jonathan Quick was so good.
Yes.
So they're getting contributions from everybody.
Yeah, I mean, Igor back-to-back shutouts. And I got to ask Brian, what are you thinking when you see Igor Shesterkin going to clock Brady Tkachuk?
Well, I mean, that's, Brady gets upset towards the end of the game for, that's what he does. He's a passionate guy, and Igor was in a sort of certain spot. So, yeah, I mean, that's when you think you're being targeted or you're in a vulnerable spot and a guy doesn't back down, sometimes you snap. We saw what Connor McDavid did to Connor Garland this week, and people up in arms. And why is it 3 games, or suspend him from whatever? I mean, it's still hockey, and everyone on the ice is a hockey player. The fact that he got up doesn't surprise me. The fact that he stayed in there tells me he knows it's him and it's 5 other guys. Okay, you can't do that. Now we're not happy, and we're all coming at you. And that was the best sign. I mean, Igor doing that, that's fine. He doesn't want to get kicked out of the game because he has a shutout going. That's cool too. Be the best at what you do. But him wanting to and making sure everyone knew and everybody following suit, that's a team. So I wanted to ask Molly, and forgive me if I don't know how long exactly you've been doing this, but have you seen the Bell Center like that ever?
It was, I mean, listen, it is my favorite arena to take in a game in the entire National Hockey League by a long shot, has been since I started. And I've heard it get really loud, but that's what I imagine it sounds like in there in a playoff game. That is something that I haven't heard. I have never been there for a playoff game, obviously. But that is what I imagine that it sounds there in the postseason. It was, I mean, they cheer there. The team could be in last place, and they cheer in that building as if they're competing for the Stanley Cup. That's just how it always is. But in a game like that where they tied it 4 times, they just kept coming back. I mean, it was in the third period and in overtime. It was so loud. I looked over at Colin Stevenson at one point, and I was like, I can't hear anything. It was magical. It was absolute magic. An awesome game to see in an awesome arena. Definitely one of my favorite regular season games that I've ever covered, for sure.
Yeah, what's so interesting about that is that when they moved from the forum was, the forum was unique. And when they moved from the forum to this arena, the Rangers were there for the 96 playoffs, and it was quiet. And people were talking about there's no atmosphere here anymore. They left it all, they left it all behind at the forum. And it took a couple of years. It did. It took a couple of years for, the passion to fill the new arena the way it did the forum, because all those old original 6 buildings, the stands were right on top of the rink. They were just so loud. They were unique. Each had its quirks. And I really, one of the great things about being old is that I went to all of those original six, arenas, and like, the Olympia, I mean, it was just, it was just fantastic, Um, but the experience in Montreal, their game presentation,
Everything.
plus the passion from the fans, it is a unique experience. It is fantastic. I mean, and the 14 conference final against them,
Mm-hmm.
the seven, the 17 they played in the first round, first round against them. Um, it's great. It's just great. And anyone who wants to go to a road game and has the means, you should try and get to Montreal, no question. And I also think it's good for it's been so long since the Canadians were a force.
Yes.
So long that people don't even remember. But hockey's better when the Montreal Canadiens are better. They are. It just is. The NHL benefits from having a strong Montreal Canadiens team, and it's been so long
It has.
since they've been at the top of the league. I mean, they made that run to the final a couple of years ago, but that was kind of a fluky one during the COVID
And no one
tournament.
got to watch it, really.
And no one got to, no one was there, so it's almost like it didn't happen. But it has just been so, it would be as if like the Yankees never made the playoffs half the time, and they got knocked out in the first round all the time. After dominating the sport forever, they're
Mm-hmm.
just another pedestrian team. And that's what, Montreal has turned into. They dominated. I mean, it was so magical to see the Montreal Canadiens. And again, like I go way, way back, but it was magical to see those teams in the 70s. Shutt, Lemaire, Lafleur, Savard, Dry. I mean, honestly, Cornway. Um, and so as a hockey fan, as a hockey person, it's good when Montreal is good.
Alrighty, well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Give us a thumbs up down below. Send us some comments. Tell us if you think the turnaround is in full force, and we'll talk to you again next week.